I tell you what, if you're ever asleep or if you're feeling tired, always tune in. Always tune in to Pre-Match Carnage with that intro, and that will wake you up. Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever the case may be, wherever you're tuning in from this wonderful, wonderful planet of ours, you're all very, very welcome to the first Pre-Match Carnage of the season, the actual season. Like, I know we done one for the Charity Shield, but there's a bit of an echo in here. Is it only me, guys? Can you hear an echo? No. All right. Hopefully it should be all right. All very welcome. Welcome to the usual time as well. As people, yeah, there you go. 95 says, shame no more Love Island this year. Congratulations to Exin, Sue, and David. Fuck knows what that means. I'll just skip on. Have no idea what that means, but I'm assuming they won, right, lads? Mick and Jack watched this kind of stuff, so yeah, you do. You
missed the whole. You missed the whole thing. You've got no one who knows what they're on about. But yeah, so I hear.
But listen, people, you're all very welcome. First Pre-Match Carnage. Fulham v Liverpool. Premier League season is back. We are so excited to be back. So excited that we thought we'd do a preview instead of like the night before or 48 hours before. I thought we'd do it a couple of days before. Do you know what I mean? Not really. The real reason is Jack is one of the most busiest people I know, and it's so beautiful. And it's an absolute pleasure to have Jack with me, Fulham fan, pundit, poet, calls him host. Oh my God, such a busy man, but I've got him on. Such a pleasure having you on, my friend.
No, it's so good to be here, mate. It's great not having to do the intro. Sort of my big takeaway from going on other shows is like, you don't have to take that early pressure of taking the intro. So now I'm looking forward to this chat more than I'm looking forward to the game.
Exactly. But people in the chat, as we know, every time someone comes on a Pre-Match Carnage, they always talk their teams down, and we know what to do. We don't need to fall for it. Mick, what's happening, pal? How's things? Everything good?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, I was just bopping along to that intro there. I know what you mean. I think I was getting a little rave on, and I was like, oh shit, it's starting now. I need to stop having a little dance and get ready to talk footy. But yeah, nice one for having me on again. Really appreciate it.
It's not a problem at all, man. It's not a problem. It's quite the intro. I thought I might as well jazz up my game. Do you know what I mean? New season, new intro, new me. But same old Liverpool, because Liverpool are. It seems like every time the first game comes around, Mick, we always draw the newly promoted teams. Like, it's quite a thing. And obviously opposition fans go wild and go mad and start talking about, oh my God, what a fix. Liverpool always get the promoted teams, blah, 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 blah. But it's pretty mad, isn't it, Mick?
It is weird the way it works out, like, to be fair, because I think like Adrian and Salah got like a ridiculous record as well, like scored in like the last 5 opening days as well.
Opening day goals, yeah.
Jack doesn't want it to be a 6th, but we all know it's probably going to happen. But yeah, it's a weird one, but I mean, I'd rather play like maybe a top 4 team, because then you get out the way early doors, and then you don't have to worry about them later on in the season. So there's pros and cons to both sides of it, really. But you get what you're given, aren't you? Away from home, would preferably prefer to be at home, but to be away and get Fulham away out of the way early doors, I suppose they're just kind of going to fly into the season. So it's going to be a barometer for them for where they are, and a barometer for us for where we are. So we've got to just kind of gauge it, and obviously they might make it a bit more difficult for some of the other teams later on in the season. So it's one of those that we might look back at it and go, yeah, I'm glad we play Fulham then rather than in December or whatever like that.
Yeah, look, it doesn't always go to plan. Like, even though we ended up, like, Pixelated Pigeon reminds us the Leeds game. Do you remember a couple of seasons ago? Like, they gave us a proper game, didn't they? I think it was in the no crowd season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
4-3
was it? I think
4-3. So yeah, so it's always mental. Like, it can be mental, but Leeds are one of those teams that just went gung ho for like, went mad, didn't they? Like, toe to toe. So yeah, exactly. Jack, of course, welcome to the channel, as I said.
Thank you.
And then welcome back to the Premier League. Talk to us. How are you feeling, man?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, like, to flip that straight on its head, right? And not in a necessarily bad way. If Fulham, to stay up, right, have to beat the teams around us. You have to beat the 6-7 teams around us, right? Yes, you occasionally see a promoted team get a result against the top 6, but it's kind of rare. And ultimately, the teams that survive are the ones who do well against the teams around us. I mean, look, the last season that we were up, we beat you at your gaff and drew with you at home. but it was one of 4 wins all season. And so you're like, okay, that's fine. It's all well and good beating Liverpool, but actually they're not the games that keep you up. And so actually playing you on the first day, one, it's a bit of a free hit because no one's even got the kind of rhythm into this season yet. Obviously, you've had the Community Shield, we've had our pre-seasons, but I don't think anyone's fully into their rhythms in this first day. So it can be a bit chaotic. And secondly, you'll be like, okay, let's, kind of throw it at it. And if we do lose this first game, as long as you don't get pasted, it's kind of like, well, that was a free hit anyway. You'd rather get that out of the way and get it done. So from a Fulham perspective, I think it's one of those things where you go, okay, cool. It's a nice one to have. And I've been talking to some Liverpool fans. They're delighted that they've got the cottage in the summer, walk down the river, the whole example of being there and getting that kind of game day experience, because it's not the same if you get in the middle of winter on a Wednesday evening as it is, when you have that wonderful kind of experience in the summer and one of the nicest places to watch football, I'd say, in the world, never mind in England. So you're looking at kind of different things there, but it's good to be back, and it's one of those things we talk about. Yes, there's obviously worries about this season. Yes, there's major squad issues at Fulham that I'm sure we'll come on to later down the line. But ultimately, you don't spend a year trying to get out of the Championship to come back to the Premier League and be all doom and gloom about it. You come back and you go, right, let's give this the best go that we've got. And I think it's going to be interesting. I feel, the centre-back issue aside, I feel that Fulham are in a better place than we have been in a little while in terms of squad cohesion, in terms of the players who are able to make that step back up to the Premier League. And that, this is a squad that looks okay. The first 11 at the very least, again, centre-backs aside, looks pretty decent this season. So I think this next bit is going to be getting these machines in and getting these kind of rhythms into this squad and making sure that it stands up. But yeah, I'm incredibly excited to be back. I don't think you can look at it any other way.
No, I think you're spot on. I think there's no other way of looking at it in terms of a promoted team getting one of the biggest clubs in the world, coming down to their place on the opening day. We've got our resident Man United trolling here. He loves us. I think Fulham will Premier League new bounce and that. Gus is brilliant. He is. He's our resident troll on the Liverpool channel, but we love him still. Yeah, look, Mick, from our point of view, I've always said it. I've been down to the cottage a couple of times. And like Jack says, I don't want to do the old cliche, but it's a lovely, lovely ground. It's not one of those grounds. It's not one of those grounds that you think, it's going to be rough. It's going to be tough. Atmospheric. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of, like Crystal Palace, Selhurst Park. Even though we've got a stunning record at Selhurst Park, the atmosphere, the ultras going to get behind them and everything. Fulham's totally different. It's a proper nice. It reminds me of Norwich and Brighton, another two grounds that I still love going to. Do you know what I mean? Especially if the weather's nice as well. It's wonderful. It's brilliant. But the nature of Liverpool and this title race and those Man City mob over the road, right? It's such that we can't take it any other way. No holiday, no friendly, like turning up. We've got to be on it from the first whistle. It's a mad situation to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it was the same last year though, but in a different type of circumstance. Because obviously, at the start of last year, we came back off the crazy year where finished third, and we had like Nat Phillips and Reece Williams centre half, and we should have never have finished third. So we went into that season with like pressure, but in a pressure in like we need to prove ourselves because people are doubting that we can even fight for this title. Whereas now it's like, well, we came within a hair's width of winning it. Doing the quadruple, came away from two games from doing that. So there's more pressure in terms of like we need to kind of get ourselves ready and go again. And I think that's what will drive this team. And I think we've seen obviously Man City a bit behind us in terms of maybe playing pre-season games, but we saw signs in that City game that we're going to be firing from minute one. And I think there's the energy's there. The new signings, Nunez, Carvalho, have added a lot in terms of quality on the pitch, but also maybe cohesion and having a bit of competition for places, I think. And when you bring in fresh faces, whenever you do that, you start to see a bit more competition, maybe a bit more fractions in the group, but in a good way, because people are scared of their positions. They need to fight for every training match, every game. So it's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, Fulham away. I've been once. I did enjoy it. But like I said before, it's not like Jack rightly said, like it's not a gimme for us, because they're just going to look at it like you said, Jack, and a completely free hit. They're not expected to beat us, albeit being at home, but we need to go there, and obviously City don't play till Sunday, I think. So we need to get 3 points, and that kind of needs to be the focus going forward. Just literally winning every game, because that's kind of the standards that we're at the moment. When you're facing Man City, you can't drop any points in whatever time in the season. So it's one of them that there's pressure on ourselves, but with Klopp and the new signings and whatever else, I think we've created a perfect atmosphere to get ready. And obviously, like someone just said in the comment there, 5 subs, I think definitely helps us.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get into the tactics and complexities of possibly the 5 subs we'll have, and if Fulham will have 5 subs, we'll get Jack's opinion on that. Like if they manage to get first narrative saying, "Big up panel, it's my birthday today. Happy birthday, mate. Smash the like, people. You'll never walk alone." Good stuff. Jack, Marco Silva, talk to us. We've got fond memories of him, obviously, as Liverpoolians. We've got absolutely lovely, wonderful memories of the fella. But what's he done for you? What's your opinion on him? Like, when you first were linked with him, how was you positive about him, and where are you now with him?
Well, it kind of came out of the blue. I think this is the thing. Fulham, obviously, Parker left, and there was that long, protracted process of getting rid of Scott Parker, and him, wanting compensation, and Bournemouth not wanting to pay for him, and all sorts going on. But you look, when you're kind of, kicking around, and you're having these conversations, you're like, okay, well, how's this happened? And we were linked to Steve Cooper, who's obviously done a good job at Nottingham Forest. We're linked to Chris Wilder, who's doing a reasonably good job at Borough as well. And all these names have been thrown around. And then suddenly it was kind of like, Fulham are going to announce Marco Silva. And within a day, Fulham had announced Marco Silva. So there was no, protracted time to do all the digging and be like, oh, God, is this a good deal? Is it a bad deal? This man came in and he waltzed into the team. And I think we'd got so used to this kind of negative style of play under Scott Parker. Now, I'm not saying that is always a bad thing, and in the Premier League sometimes you have to adapt a little bit of pragmatism, especially down the lower end of the table, in order to survive. But Fulham did very similar things in the Championship under Scott Parker. It was very much go 1-0 up and kind of then be like, bring on a third centre back after 50 minutes and tuck in. You could tell he's
been coached by Jose, couldn't you? You can tell.
There was a little bit of kind of negativity. And I think, considering Fulham's, best runs in the last few years have come under kind of free-flowing attacking managers, Khanage and now Marco Silva, it was all a bit, I don't really like this. You come to, and so the first game to watch us, and the first couple of games, watch us put one past Huddersfield and then suddenly be like, right, we're going for the kill. And they had a player sent off and suddenly Fulham had scored 5. And you're like, okay, it's good to watch Fulham going for teams again, because the attacking talent in that team was enough to blow teams in the Championship away. And what's going to be interesting this year is seeing how that style translates and how he can, move around it and make sure that it can be a slightly more pragmatic. We know we're not going to dominate the ball as much as the Premier League. That's the obvious. But you're looking at the kind of bit of how do Fulham still play on the counter? A lot of these goals we saw were in transition last season. It was Mitrovic dropping in deep. Yes, he scored 43 goals. He also got season high for assists. And so much of that was dropping into the middle, playing flick balls one time over the top for former Liverpool man Harvey Wilson and now Liverpool man Fabio Carvalho. So there's a real Liverpool connection in this game on the first day. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how that develops. And we know that Mitrovic isn't a striker that's going to play on the last man and try and get in behind. And that was why Parker didn't play him the last time we were up. But what he has now added to his game is a different kind of string, being able to make those things happen for players around him. And I think that's going to be incredibly interesting to see. But last year, I think for so many of us, especially having been away from the grounds for so long, was a really interesting thing to come back in and watch free-flowing attacking football. We scored 7 3 times, we scored 6 twice, we scored 5 3 times. It was joyful. Fulham are now the record goal scorers in a Championship season, which is a good thing to hold. We know it's going to be different this time round, but I think Marco Silva has the big backing of most of the fan base.
Look, rightly so, right? Even from looking from the outside, Mick, obviously wrong. Well, in our case, right man at the right club, but his time at Everton, from his point of view, was a wrong man at the wrong club.
It's a poison chalice, isn't it?
It's a poison chalice.
No one walks into that job and does well. Ancelotti, went and won the Champions League, surely, but he came and he did okay at Everton. You say, hang on, if he can't smash this out of the park, can anyone?
I was just going to say Ancelotti, Benitez, to name few, right? A couple of managers that just poison chalice, but. Any memories of this guy and his time at Hull? Like obviously he's back in the big league. I personally have always had lots of time for him. I always thought he's going to make it. Now, what does make it mean? Make it means a successful manager of a team in the Premier League, I guess. That would be a bloody hell, most coaches' dream. Did you think that of him when his time at Everton? Any fond memories of him, or are you one of those ones undecided on him?
Yeah, obviously I kind of did like him, and then obviously went to Everton, but then I didn't. Obviously, fail miserably, which he did quite spectacularly, which I was happy about. But it's one of them, like, you've got to appreciate that a manager that wants to get the ball on the deck and actually play footy. Obviously, they play with a big fella up front, so there's a bit of long balls in there and balls into the box and whatever else. But that's just kind of what footy is now. There's like a lot of long balls. Obviously, if they're targeted, you've got Mitrovic up there who. It's going to be interesting to see how he does as well and how he handles, obviously, like Jack said, scoring absolutely loads, setting records.
43, wasn't it, Jack, last season? 43. Ridiculous, that. Is that a record? That's a championship record.
By about 12 as well.
Yeah, craziness.
If we think about some of the players that have played in the championship that have come up, so many good strikers, but 43 is insane if you like actually sit for a second and like think of that number, 43 goals.
Yeah, but and it's one of them, like, there's pressure on Marco Silva to get that obviously not the same amount of goods out of Mitrovic this time round, but to at least make him prove that he's Premier League quality, and he's not one of those, like, there's so many strikers, isn't he, like you said, Grizz, that are really good in the Championship. They make the step up again to the Premier League after dropping down, and they just can't hack it. But no, I don't mind Silva. Like like I said, he wants to get the ball and wants to play footy, and he's obviously wants to train his group of players in the right way. And you've always got to respect that, especially with the way football's gone the last 20 years, going from the old hoof up to the striker and knocking it down and whatever else. This new breed of like manager, obviously he's a part of that in a small way, I suppose. But I've got respect for him. Obviously, it didn't end up very well at Everton, which was good. But I think Fulham, with Everton, like you said, the poison chalice, like they want results yesterday, Everton fans, and that's kind of, you go into that role, you're never gonna achieve what they want you to achieve. So I think Fulham's a good fit in a way, because obviously you're going to get a bit of time to kind of bed in, get your players in, get your system set up, and then go from there. So I think that was a good matchup for him, I think.
Jack, Mick talks about he's going to get time to set in, and what probably Mick meant was like sort of trust from the owners. Talk to me about my uncle, my namesake, Mr. Khan. Talk to me. So look, a bit of tension, and we're going to get into why possible some tension between the two, and some fans asking more from the owner. But again, what kind of job has your owner done since he's come in, and what is the relationship now? How's it going with him and Silva?
So I don't think many fans have a major problem with Shad Khan, who has invested, a ton into the club, who has overseen the redevelopment of the Riverside. Give us a bit of a background, because I'm sorry, I haven't really done it. So give us a background on the new ownership. So, I mean, he took over the club just before we were relegated, the first time, which is obviously a difficult time to come in. He took over from Mohamed Al Fayed, who is seen as the greatest owner in Fulham's history, and oversaw that rise through the divisions, the 13 years in the Premier League in a row. These was the glory days in Fulham's history. And he obviously sold up, but by the time he'd sold up, the investment had kind of dried up. So Shad Khan had taken over a team where the squad was starting to age. There was very little investment in the academy. What we've seen since he came in is, yes, this kind of period of instability, and but I don't really think that's to do with investment. He's put the funds up, and Fulham have just not spent it particularly wisely. Where the tension comes in is that his son Tony is director of football, and a lot of fans have seen that and kind of seen it as a kind of, I'm playing Football Manager with my old man's money. And that's a little bit tricky to take. Now, some of this is, I think, or at the very start, was overblown. But I think what we've seen this year is that Fulham were effectively promoted in February. And we talk about learning lessons, and what we have seen is learned lessons in that, we haven't gone out and spent 120 million, although there were caveats in that big spending spree, and that Fulham's entire team was made up of loanees and players who couldn't make that jump. The kind of money had to be spent. It just wasn't necessarily spent in the right time. And last time we came up was obviously the COVID season, and it was only a month between our Championship playoff final and the first day of the season where things went wrong. So you're looking at those and going, okay, that's fine. But when you then get promoted, effectively, as I say, February, March, they said they're going to learn the lessons. This has given us the time to build the team and build the squad that we don't, that we come into the season in the right way. And where the tension has come in here is that Fulham have needed 2 centre-backs, maybe 3, since February, March, and none have come through the door. Now, obviously, signing players is difficult, right? It's really hard to get players through the door, especially, when you're in a club where things have been unstable and they're going, are we joining a Premier League club or are we joining a team that is going to be back in the Championship next season? So that's difficult. And I think they wanted a little bit more Premier League experience as well. And trying to get teams to sell you, players in the same division is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. So I do understand that it's not, as easy as fans, I think, would like to make out sometimes. But that said, Fulham are still going into this season with 2 senior centre-backs in the squad. And one of them is a 34-year-old Tim Ream. Now, Tim Ream has been a wonderful servant for Fulham. He is a lovely ball-playing centre-back in the Championship. He's been a colossus. Last time we were in the Premier League...
Is he the American?
Is an American, yeah. He's he's been a real wonderful club servant. He's been around for a long time, and he really is a lovely ball playing centre back when you have 70% possession. The problem is that at 34 that turning circle is a little bit worrying, and the fact that he's not going to have that ball and be able to spread the ball in the way that he is brilliant at, it is a slight concern. Now, I think he's probably earned his right to have a shot. The problem is that there isn't anyone to come back in behind him if that shot doesn't work out. And that's, I think, the major concern among Fulham fans. Now, at the weekend, Marco Silva said, we can't play a season with this, with the squad level at this point. And, Fulham have famously done late business in windows. And last time out in the Premier League, we lost the first 6 in a row and never were able to count, to pull it back in. They weren't able to kind of get ourselves back into the mix in order to make that competitive. And I think a lot of people are worried about the fact that could happen again. And so I think that's the cause of the tension. But in terms of the actual owner and what Shah Khan has done and his ownership, I think that's a very important thing to kind of differentiate between him and the kind of director of football, where a lot of fans' anger is aimed, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah. People, amazing support as usual. I know I've mussed about with the time, sometimes 7, 9, 10. There's over 200 of you in here. I'm going to try to do it 9 p.m. from now on. Appreciate the support as usual. Mucking about with you guys. Well, because of Love Island, really. Don't blame me. Blame Love Island. Hit that like button. I've got a question from one of our channel members. Jack, he says, Tony Khan is so involved, absorbed with his wrestling company. Can't imagine how he's able to give director of football at Fulham 100%, whilst also being involved with the Jaggers. Do fans feel he's doing a good job? I think Jack's pretty much answered that, but anything you want to add to that?
Well, this is it. This is the kind of other side of the coin, in that he's doing 3 jobs look, he's a wrestling nut, and that's fine. It's amazing that he's got a passion project, and that by all accounts, I mean, it's not my scene, I'll be honest, but it seems to be doing well, and I'm delighted for him, because that's obviously something that he really, cares about and is invested in. I think the flip of that is that people are like, how are you doing all 3 of these jobs at the same time? If anyone else was doing this, there'd be questions asked. Now, obviously, it's his old man's money. So ultimately, Shah Khan gets that call. But I would say the overwhelming feeling amongst the fan base is that it's probably too much on one plate. Now, you can do different things. A lot of people do different jobs, have different roles, especially in kind of board level at football. But I think, with 3 relegations in 5 seasons or 6 seasons, 3 promotions, there's questions asked about whether some of these signings have been up to the task. And, we're hearing similar things from Marco Silva now that we heard from Slavica Khanage 4 years ago, that the squad wasn't up to scratch, and I think that's something, it's not necessarily the issue there. It's the fact that the mistakes are being made again. And it's not just him. There's plenty of people involved in this. There's lots of different people at Fulham board level who have been there a long, long time, who have got away with good seasons, bad seasons, and the kind of everything in the middle. And I think that if this was any other job and there was these things being done, then maybe there'd be more questions asked. But it's a funny old world, football, isn't it?
Absolutely is. It's a very funny old world because El Drago reminds us, Mick, of the last lineup when Fulham, as Jack very early on in proceedings reminded us, like, don't get too carried away, lads. Last time we played you, we beat you 1-0. And he's spot on. And this was our lineup. El Drago, another channel member, reminds us, Mick. Do you remember that?
I don't want to, to be honest. Yeah, wow, that was, like I touched on that before, didn't I? Like, obviously going into that season, after that season was stressful. Going into this season is stress in a different way because it's obviously a very different time, and it feels like a long time ago, but it also feels like yesterday at the same time. So it's a weird one. It's a very weird one, that. But I think they deserved the win that day. Because
yeah. They outplayed us, I remember, yeah.
We just weren't. I just wish you could just pick that season up and just launch it in the bin because it was just horrific from start to finish, weren't it?
To be fair, this day aside, I reckon we'd do the same. So we'll both take that.
But obviously, if we're going to go into the possible lineups that we think our respective coaches are going to pick, right? But just the top of our head, Mick, I'd say Alisson, Robertson, and Salah. I think there's only going to be 3 starters without revealing what our actual prediction will be. But just the top of my head, don't know if you agree with that. It's probably just 3, right?
What, out of those on the screen, you mean?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. So
Alisson, pretty much.
Alisson, Robbo, and Salah.
And Salah.
Yeah,
realistically.
But as a kind of counterpoint, you're looking at that lineup. If you're rotating and it's mid-season, right? Anyway, there's only 4 players in there that you're a bit like mad that they played. Nico Williams,
the whole back 4. Well,
the two Williams is now Phillips and Shaqiri, right? Everyone else is part of this Liverpool side, or at least was in Wijnaldum's case. Yeah. There's a lot of changes, yes, and the big key is the back, the centre back partnership, and I get that, but there is an element here that I'd say 7 of those are regular Liverpool players.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, there's still no way we should have lost. But who was your goal scorer? Because I don't think none of you. How much of your? Can you remember your lineup?
It was Mario Lemina.
Lemina, a Southampton fella.
There's a lovely strike as well, to be fair.
So where's he now? He
spent last season at Nice, I believe. Although I'm not 100% sure they've renewed his contract. So who knows where Mario Lemina's gone to now? But yeah, an interesting one.
What I was going to say, here we go. Let's get into the Harvey, Elliott and Carvalho derby. Let's get into it. Mick, as Jack says, there is a lot of underlying stories behind this sort of kind of the main headline of obviously the game, but a lot of players. Harry Wilson is over there now. They wanted Nico Williams after a very successful season last season. Obviously, Nottingham Forest outbidding them. They've now put in, I believe, a bid for Nat Phillips, who they'd like to get over the line because obviously they need centre backs. There's a bit of toing and froing in terms of players-wise going there. Harry Wilson going over there done very well for himself. To me, he was always one of those guys that I thought, just does quite a few good things really neatly, but nothing spectacular enough to have a career at Liverpool. What was your view on him?
Yeah, exactly that. A hell of a left foot, and hell of a strike on him. I think we've seen I think it was a free kick against Man United once, and he just absolutely belted the top corner. I was just like, oh my God, this kid's amazing. But I think you're right. Like he's good, but it's at that bracket where obviously if he wants to play left of a 3, Salah's there. I think he played in midfield a few times when he was out on loan. And it's like, well, if you want to get into our midfield, you've got to be higher echelon. You've got to be better than what Harry Wilson is. But it's one of them. Like, I wanted them to do well, obviously, because he came through the academy and whatever else. But then you're like, he got to the stage where he knew that he had to make the move. And I think, like I said, with the Marco Silva thing, I think Fulham is a good fit because obviously smashed the Championship and now back in the Premier League. And this is a big season for Harry Wilson as well, because obviously he's maybe been doubted, obviously, for his time at Liverpool. That's maybe tarnished what he's done so far, but to build himself back up with another team and to get back into the Premier League, I think it's a big one for him. And I think it was just like unfortunate circumstances. We were getting much better, and he came through at a time where any other time, to go 10 years back or 15 years back, he would have been in the starting 11. He just kind of came through at maybe the slightly wrong time.
If he was around in the Stuart Downing era, we wouldn't have needed Stuart Downing. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
That's one way to look at it. We would have saved ourselves so much money and so much
20 million.
Yeah, and so much abuse for buying those players in that period. But Jack, to you, Harry Wilson's time so far, a good signing for you, no doubt. Fans' favourite, let us know. And Nico Williams, how was he? Bit gutted that you didn't get him over the line. I know you guys have brought, how do you say his name?
Mbabu,
Kevin Mbabu. Yeah. I'll call him Kev personally. No, personally, you see. You've brought a right back, sort of, I guess, to play in that role. But Nico Williams, time well spent there, right? And Harry Wilson, another good signing for you guys.
Yeah, with Wilson, I think you're both kind of spot on with exactly what you said. He's a good player. I think he's probably a bottom half Premier League player who probably isn't just isn't good enough right now to be part of this Liverpool squad. Although I did enjoy this hot take on the side from Vex Blazer saying Harry Wilson in our squad last season while Salah was in bad form would have won us the league. I'm not 100% sure of it, but I enjoyed reading it nonetheless. He was very good for us. I was a little bit skeptical because I'd seen him at Bournemouth, and I was like, "Is this a bloke who is just going to pick the ball up and shoot from 30 yards every time he gets the ball?" And I was worried about that because I've seen Anthony Knockaert do that for the last 2 seasons, and I was really fed up of it. So it got to that point. But Wilson was brilliant last season in the Championship. He was excellent, and I think he's more than capable of playing in the Premier League. I think he might be injured for this game, which would be a shame, really, because
shit.
Against his former team, he's had a bit of a knock, so that's they're still assessing him at the moment. But I do think that it's an interesting one in terms of where he fits. Nico Williams was very good for us, very good attacking right back and in a team again with loads of possession, and who was able to plonk the fullbacks on halfway and never really go behind them. The only time he really struggled were people running directly at him. If he'd been available at sort of 7-8 million, I think we would have probably signed him. I'm really glad we didn't pay 17 million for him. I don't think he's a 17 million pound player. Although that said, I do think he'll do well at Forest because they play with 3 at the back and wing backs, which should be able to cover for some of those defensive weaknesses. But good luck to him because he was excellent, in that period. Mbabu came in for 5 million euros. I think we've kind of nicked a little bit of a steal there, to be perfectly honest with you. So yeah, it's one of those. He's great to have him around. I'm glad we didn't pay that money for him, but that doesn't make him a bad player. I just don't think he's quite worth that. And Wilson, been excellent so far, and high hopes that he kicks on again in the Premier League.
How much was Harry Wilson again?
Well, it was all part of this whole, thing that's going on here and why we're talking about so many players kind of flipping between these two. After the Harvey Elliott kind of fiasco, if you will, where it all went to court and that, I think the two clubs agreed, especially with, that Wilson kind of came, we paid for him, and I think it was a loan with an option. I think it was about 8 million. We're looking at, I think it was a bit of a peace offering, to be perfectly honest with you, going, all right, okay, no more bad blood. And I think then what happened with Fabio, obviously the deal fell through in January, but it wasn't to do with either party not really wanting to see it through. We just couldn't get it through in time. And I think that, Williams was kind of part of that deal, and the whole thing was working as kind of let's kind of build this relationship. I think the two backroom staffs have really started to form some sort of conversation at the very least. And Fulham don't want to get in our obviously gutted that Carvalho's left us. To be perfectly honest, he's a wonderful footballer, but equally, I don't want to stand in his way as development of a footballer, because I think he is sensational. I think he's going right to the top. So, you see him get that move, and you see how much game time young players have been trusted with at Liverpool, and you're looking at that and going, fair play, off you go, lad, and the best of luck to you. So yeah, I think that relationship is improved, and that's part of why we've seen quite a lot of people treading these two paths in recent years.
And if it means us getting the likes of Harvey, Elliott and Carvalho, which we're going to speak on in the next segment in depth, long may that continue.
We're going to need some more back, I'll be honest.
Absolutely. Nadir, I absolutely agree with you. Mick Moran has such a great voice. I called it dulcet, Scouse tone. I make sure I text. I make sure I don't text him during the day in the WhatsApps. I make sure I voice note him so he feels obliged to voice note me back, because that way I get to hear his voice. Absolutely.
Oh, is that your trick? I didn't
Yeah,
realize
that's my
what
trick,
you were
and it
doing.
works every time
Makes sense.
because he voice notes me back. Andiko says, "Keep doing the Reds proud, Grizz at Foot Golf." Look, I don't want to give too much away, but as Mick reminded me, well, no, not Mick doesn't know either, so I don't want to spoil it. We're at hole 14, 13, and I'm doing you guys proud, but there's 5 holes to go, and that's all I'm going to say for now. All right, that's all I'm going to say for now. But keep watching, keep following. It's quite fun. We just spoke about 2 players, Mick, that I want to speak about and thank Fulham for, because in my humble opinion, I think these 2 kids will go on to be probably bargains of the decade, in my opinion. Harvey, Elliott, I think around 5 million, 7 million. Well, both in the region of about, let's just say 15 million circa, right, for both the pair of them. I think this will go down as the best bit of business any club's done around Europe, possibly. That's how much I rate these 2 kids. Your thoughts on the 2 kids and the time so far at Liverpool?
Yeah, amazing. I mean, both 19. I think Carvalho might be 20 soon, but
didn't we get Harvey younger?
Yeah,
youngest Premier League player of all time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
But yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? Like, we signed Elliott, and you've seen clips of him for Fulham, and you're like, can he do it in the Liverpool Red? And then he quickly showed that last year when he was in the first 4 start 11 games. I remember going to the Burnley game, the first game at home, and
when I saw him, I thought he was a mascot. I thought, who's this mascot come out? I couldn't believe it. And everyone was like, no, he's playing. That's Harvey Elliott. I said, oh my God. Do you remember standing next to Tarkowski and me and all them people? And I thought, and he was the best player on the pitch. Do you remember me?
Yeah. And it was one of them, like, you look at the team sheet and you think, oh, Elliott's done well. He might get on the bench, and Klopp puts him in. And it goes back to what Jack said before. Like, these players come to Liverpool because they know there's a pathway, and then they know there's going to be opportunities to be playing. So, I mean, absolutely made up to have both of them. And we've only seen Carvalho in bits so far, but from pre-season, obviously coming on against City, and had a good impact in the Nunez goal, doing the Bobby type work in that 10 position, robbing someone of possession and then getting the ball back and feeding it out wide for the goal. And obviously doing well in pre-season. It's going to be interesting to see how he does, because obviously he's another one that can play in various positions, play on the left of a 3 in midfield, left of a 3. On the wing, I think he played as a false 9 in the Strasbourg friendly. So it's one of them, like, he has to define what position he wants to play in, but the fact that Klopp likes his forwards and his midfielders to kind of be quite versatile in their approach and how the positions they can pop up on the pitch. Like, obviously we want to be as unpredictable as possible, so to have these 2 in our ranks, and I'm going to be interested to see how much they play. Like, I imagine they'll probably get probably similar game time this season, especially in the cup competitions and stuff. But what backups to have, like, for the midfield, or whoever, any injuries we get anything like that, just both really, really promising. Yeah, like the fact that they're only 19 and nearly 20, and they've got 10 plus years hopefully at Liverpool Football Club is absolutely amazing. I can't wait to see how the next 2 to 3 years pan out, and see where they are at the stage in the career then.
Jack, I felt it unfair to make you wax lyrical about 2 kids that you're probably fucking gutted and heartbroken to let go. So I let Mick do most of the description of the players. But we have got a question for you. He says, does Jack think Carvalho will have a huge first season for us? He's had eyes on him in the Championship, so we'll be able to gauge better than all of us.
I think that there's a funny thing here, that I think Carvalho is exquisite. I think he's unbelievable. I do think he's mostly a 10. He played sort of as an 8-10 for Fulham last year, as that kind of ball carrying furthest midfielder of forward of a 3. But I think what makes him quite special is that not only has he got this unbelievable shift of balance and the ability to, to wrong foot people kind of all over it, but he's got this intensity and this tenacity to his game as well. For someone so small, he flies into challenges. He's not afraid of defenders. He's not afraid of getting kicked. He's not afraid of getting hurt. He's brilliant. And I think that's what will enamor him to Klopp as well. You think, what does Jurgen Klopp, like in players? And these are all the qualities and traits that he does enjoy. And I think interesting with both Elliott and Carvalho, they're both kind of versatile at this point. Elliott slightly more so in that we've seen him play wide, we've seen him play as the 8 in this midfield 3, and that gives him more opportunities for minutes. And what I was worried about with Carvalho was Liverpool, haven't very much, at the very least, played with a 10, and I was wondering where he fitted in to this equation. But I think Klopp will be able to get the best out of him in a variety of positions. And I think now, I picked him as my breakout star of the Premier League season the other day, because having watched preseason and having watched what he brings to the table, I do have a funny feeling that he's going to play a lot more than people originally thought. Myself included, I figured that he'd maybe bed in for a year and then make the jump. But I'm starting to think that, especially because I do think Liverpool lack a ball-carrying midfielder in that midfield. Obviously, Naby's excellent at it, but ultimately doesn't play all that much, due to injuries mostly, but, hasn't been able to get that rhythm going. I wonder if, especially in games against slightly weaker opposition, Carvalho is used as that kind of late runner, who's able to carry the ball into the final third and make things happen there, especially if things are, you're playing a low block and no one's getting through that final line. So I wonder if he gets a fair amount of game time here in a kind of variety of different roles. Yeah, I think he might explode. I wouldn't say he's going to have a huge season. I don't think he's going to have, a 10-goal, 10-assist season. But I do think that he might well pop up with some important moments. And I do have a funny feeling that Klopp already quite likes him and, seems to trust him in a variety of different positions, which could be an interesting one to keep an eye on.
Jack, I think you've nailed it, and I expected you to nail it, because that's why I've asked you on. Because you're fucking brilliant. I think, Mick, the thing that he's nailed there, Jack, and we've seen, haven't we, Mick, the tenacity, because the instant comparison we've had, right, Jack, is Phil Coutinho. And I've brushed it off, and I've said no, because this guy's got everything that you just said. He's got that little bite in him that Phil didn't have.
I think, and I know this is a little bit sacrilege in a Liverpool channel, he reminds me a bit of Bernardo Silva.
Yes, sir. He absolutely does.
Take that.
Mick, I literally was speaking about it on a stream I was doing earlier on another channel, and I was saying, and they were asking me about Carvalho, and I said, do you know what? He's got that little bit of a bite in him and the tenacity in him. And like Jack described him, he's not shy, not afraid. How many times did he get booked yesterday in the friendly against Strasbourg? We were playing Strasbourg, Jack, yesterday.
Yeah, you got the kids out, I hear.
Yeah, we had the kids out, and we were playing the Strasbourg men, right? And twice the size of him, they were kicking him from pillar to post in the friendly. But he was getting up, running at him, trying his best to, keep going. He's got that bit of bite in him, hasn't he? And so I've seen that develop in Elliott as well, Mick. Have you noticed that? And that's what's enabled him to be thrust into this 8 position. I'm going to hold my hand up and say I was one of the ones, wasn't sure if Elliott is going to have a successful career. But I caveat that I meant at right wing, in terms of the replacement to Salah, right? So people forgot that aspect and said, oh my God, Grizz, you're the same one that said he's not got a Liverpool career. I did caveat that saying, as a thing, the way he's been evolved into this 8, I genuinely think he's got a... I know Jack said Bernardo Silva and Carvalho. Elliott's got a little bit of Bernardo Silva in him as well. Do you know the way he holds onto the ball and he's becoming both of them are very industrious and work rate. Klopp loves that shit, right, Mick?
He does, and it goes back to what I said before. Like, they're both 19. They're still growing. They still need to bulk out. They still need to get stronger. And you can see those core attributes are already there, like Jack rightly mentioned. So imagine that once they've got a bit of strength in the body and they can hold people off. And like Bernardo Silva, we absolutely hate him, but he's one of the best in the world, because he's got that blend of being a massive knobhead, but also being really, really good at football. And we love players like that. Luis Suarez, key example. You love to have those type of... You've got to have those characters in your team. You've got to. That's how you win football matches, and that's how you remain as good as Liverpool are at the moment. So yeah, on Carvalho, I think we've seen it in the Leipzig game. I think it might have been the Nunez, when Nunez got 4. I think their right back absolutely tries to take his legs off within the first 5 minutes twice, and Klopp has a go. But then you could see Carvalho having a go back, and I think he was really, really tired from like doing like 2 sessions the day before and a session before the game.
He's spoken about pre-season being unlike anything he's ever encountered.
Yeah, and it's one of them. Like I think his brain was like, right, I'm gonna absolutely tear this fella apart because he keeps kicking me. But his brain just wasn't doing what his legs wanted because he was absolutely knackered. But you can see all those core skills. I think that the moment in the Leipzig game, just to reference that, where he heads it into the space and runs onto it, and then he plays the assist for Nunez in that game, and it's just stuff like that where you can see exactly where he wants to go with the football, and to have that ability in your head to know what the next 5 steps are when you're that age. It's something that you're born with, to be honest. That's something that obviously you can train to be a really good footballer, but to have that part in the brain at that age, and to, similar with Harvey Elliott, to play a pass in behind and cut defences open in the way that he can do, and stuff like that is it's amazing to see. And I think it's very exciting for those two, I think. And under Klopp as well, like, what better manager to absolutely squash every bit of potential out of them. He's the best man for the job.
It's also worth maybe pointing out here that Carvalho has never really had a full pre-season, because, you know, obviously he only really broke onto the scene in the first team towards the back end of Fulham's last Premier League season. Last summer, there was the whole handover of managers. And even then, you know, we talked about it very briefly earlier, that, you know, Silva didn't come in until later on. And then he had COVID for 2 weeks. We only got 2 weeks with the squad before the season kicked off. So this is the first time that Carvalho has ever really done a full first team pre-season. And to be playing the way he is here, I think that it's quite spectacular. I really do think he's going right to the pinnacle.
Manny sends in a super chat. Appreciate the support. He says, "Great show. Elliott is going to be a beast. So excited for these young guys coming up." I'm going to ask you a horrible question, Jack, because I'm a horrible bloke. Choose one.
You might as well crack on. Carvalho. Very much so. Like, I really like Harvey, and I actually interviewed him a couple of years back on Ranks, and he is a really, really nice lad. And obviously I had an impression of the way that he left and all of this, and he strolled on as a 15-year-old with his hair in cornrows, and I was like, okay, this kid thinks he's the business. It was at Millwall away in the cup as well. He just wandered onto the pitch like nothing had happened. I was like, okay, this kid backs himself. But talking to him about Liverpool and about growing up as a Liverpool fan and all of that, and, you know, his dog is called Gerard, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, we talked to him about it, and suddenly you come out the back of it and you're like, okay, this is really, really interesting to see it from kind of your perspective. And also, it just come from that year at Blackburn, and I think it had grounded him a lot to go back into that and be like, okay, you're not you've come here you were the star boy at Fulham, you're the youngest player ever, you made this big move to Liverpool, everyone's really excited, you've done well, and then you get, you know, chucked back into the Championship, and people are like, we don't respect you unless you earn it. And he'd come back, I think, a far more mature player after that season. It was an excellent season for him. Obviously, last year curtailed by injuries, but I do expect him to kick on. But of the two, I do think that Carvalho is the better player. I think we could be talking about someone who's genuinely incredibly special here.
Wow. I love it. Jack's got us proper hyped up even more. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Harvey Elliott. I've met his family at a game. I was managed to get spoof my way into hospitality, and managed to meet his father. And his father's such a wonderful man, and he's massive as well. I've just got to say that, like, he's massive. He's like 7'4". He's brilliant, and he's such a big friendly giant. But yeah, shout out to Mr. Elliott. I love messages like this. Thank you very much, Grizz. I'd like to thank you for having me through my depression, man. Anytime, my friend. Anytime you want to message me on my socials, all my DMs, everything's open. Talk to me anytime you want, my brother, about anything that you want. Sticking with you, Jack, someone wants to ask, and I wanted to ask as well. We've spoken about sort of the issues, but you've brought in players, right?
Yes, and you've brought good ones as well.
Well, someone wants to know about Polinia, Sporting Lisbon, DM. I quite like him, physical, very strong, 6 foot plus. Rodri build type player. Obviously not a patch on Rodri yet. Hopefully we'll find out after weekend if he's really a patch on Rodri. But so Polinia, and talk us through the other signings that you've made and your impressions of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the most important signing Fulham have made so far.
Okay.
So we've been, we saw the last time we were up that midfield was run through far too often. Someone who was that in just who was able to kind of shut down elements of different games and stop Fulham being opened up. And look, Scott Parker was decided to kind of fix that by going back to a 5 at the back, 4 in front, 1 up top. It was very turgid, but he had to in some ways because it was so open and so wild in the kind of middle there. And look, Harrison Reed is a wonderful player, but he's not a sole DM. He's one of those kind of dynamo players that bounces about, wants to fly into tackles, wants to push higher up. I've called him a B-Tech Kante before, which obviously is high praise, but
that's still good. Yeah, I was going to say I'll take that. Still.
I don't think he's that. I don't think he's obviously that good. I'm not suggesting he is before I get absolutely murdered in the comments. But I think he's that kind of player, who likes. And I don't see Kante as a sole 6 either. I think Kante's best season probably at Chelsea came alongside Nemanja Matic in that midfield where he was allowed to roam and destroy at will. Now I think Palhinha and Reed might give that kind of dynamic where Palhinha is able to sit and screen at the bottom and break up play. And he's quite athletic, as you say, someone who's able to win duels in the middle and basically stop this team being opened up. And Reed can bomb around him. And I think that's a good combination play that kind of goes, together in those gaps. So yeah, I'm excited in terms of that one. I think he's a really important player. Give that defense a little bit more screening. Yes, part of it is that the defense wasn't good enough last time out. Part of it was what they weren't given the defensive, reinforcement ahead of them in order to make things work either. So I think that one, and I think he is probably a Champions League pedigree player. Now, I don't think he's going to be signing for you, and I don't think he's going to be signing for Real Madrid, but I think he's a group stage Champions League pedigree player. And to have someone like that, in a relegation scrap, I think it's going to be a good thing. We picked up a couple of others, Kevin Mbabu, another one who's Champions League experience, right back. He'll rotate with Kenny Tete in that right-hand spot. Good competition, 2 good players, 2 internationals. So that's good stuff. And Mana Solomon, who's come in from Shakhtar Donetsk eventually. Tricky little player, again, Champions League.
Replacement?
I think he'll play off the left. And I'm interested to see how Fulham line up because I think that we will play with slightly less of a 4-2-3-1 and more of a 4-3-3 just to give the midfield a little bit more sturdiness. Andreas Pereira's obviously come in from Manchester United, who was on loan at Flamengo, I think it was last season.
Pre-season
in fact, it definitely was Flamengo. But he played more slightly as an 8 there, and I thought that was interesting. Someone who he played, wants to have those attacking instincts, good dead ball specialist, and is, I think, yes, pre-season pillar, and I completely agree. And obviously we've seen his best things there, but I do wonder if he was just a club that was just a little bit too big, and he's probably, got that. I could play for a Southampton. I could play for a big, quite a good player. I'm pretty excited. I was a little bit wary of it at first, but he's had some big moves. He's been at Flamengo, obviously one of the 2 biggest clubs in Brazil. He was at Lazio for a bit. All of them felt a bit, Flamengo aside, really, where he did make a massive mistake in the Copa Libertadores final, but. He haven't really worked, but I think he might work out. So yeah, and today it looks like Bernd Leno has come in. So a goalkeeper who is a brilliant shot stopper. Yes, he has issues, and otherwise he would probably still be Arsenal's number 1. He's not great with the ball at his feet. He's not a brilliant claimer of crosses, but he is an excellent shot stopper. And I think in a team where we're looking at. This is going to be a team that is going to face a lot of shots this season. It's going to be a team who are on the back foot a little bit more than we're used to. Having someone of his shot-stopping ability in goal, I think, will improve this side. So, I don't think there's been enough signings, but I do think the signings that have come in have been good signings. So, the recruitment work is good. It just needs to be faster.
Yeah, that's always the case. It seems to be the case for every club. Every club's fan base is asking for more recruitment, quicker recruitment. But as you said earlier, it's not as simple as that, especially in this day and age of some of the naughtiest agents around that, are so smart and ahead of the game these days, But Mick, your opinion on the latest one, Bernd Leno, as we were speaking off air. I hate this kind of thing. We know we kind of know what's going to happen on Saturday. Hopefully not. But Bernd Leno, decent price, decent pedigree, Fulham. I think it's a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, I think for the price, it's worth the gamble. I think, like Jack rightly says, like he's one of those players that you worry about when the ball goes back to them, and especially at a club like Arsenal, I suppose it's more prevalent because they want to play out from the back and whatever, and your passing needs to be on point. You need to be coming out for crosses. Distribution needs to be perfect. I think for Fulham, he's a good shot stopper, so I think that suits the way that's what Fulham need to be doing. They need to be saving shots this year. They're going to be facing a lot of them. So if he does well in that regard for them, then they can obviously forego the rest of the other stuff. Albeit if he does save a lot of shots, then the confidence for the rest of the game might come as well. So it's one of those things that he probably needs a bit of a confidence boost. He's been ousted as the number one for Arsenal, so he needs that platform to kind of build himself back up. But for the price, like I said, Grizz, it's a no-brainer, and yeah, it's probably a good fit, I suppose, going forward.
Yeah, exactly. Anfield Road in just tells me there's only 108 likes, nearly 300 of you in there. That's like, what's the problem? Like, what's your problem, guys? Like, is there a problem? Like, message me if there's a problem, but like the stream at least, and then we can talk afterwards. Fuck's sake. But Mick, we've got some good news today as well. Well, a couple of good news for us in terms of Alisson should be fit. That's huge, massive. My sort of relationship as a fan with Adrian is weird and very well documented. I don't want to go into that, but Alisson coming back, especially with Kelleher not being fit, but with Alisson back, okay, breathe. And Jota signs a new deal extension. I was really gutted to see him get injured in pre-season. He was one of those guys that I've been saying. People are speaking about Haaland, Nunez, Mane not being there. Diaz needs to do this, and everyone's sleeping on Jota. I really expected Jota to start off like a house on fire, possibly, and I think probably would have led the attack if everything was sound and normal in pre-season. But great to have him signed up, and it's the way we work, right? Bring him on a low wage, prove that you're good enough, and we'll increase your wages and contract. Rightly so.
Yeah, exactly. And what is he, 25? So we've tied him down till he's 30, and that's what Liverpool do. Obviously he's been here 2 years. If it feels like longer, but it's one of them. Like he got injured probably in both of those seasons at maybe crucial periods. I think the first season was it like a Champions League game or something like that, where people were saying, why is he played in this? He gets
dead rubber. It was a dead rubber in.
Yeah.
I can't even remember where.
I can't remember the name, but yeah, it's one of them. Like he gets injured that, and then obviously he gets injured the season after, and like I think he gets plus 20 goals last year, and it's like one of them. If he wouldn't have got injured, how many would he have got last year? Because we know how good he is. Like maybe in terms of like all round game, it's not quite there, but in terms of a goal scorer, I think I saw a Pep Linder's quote today. Like he's not always in the game, but he'll pop up with a goal. I think that's literally the biggest cliche of a striker. You don't care if they're not in the game for 90 minutes. If they pop up in 90+1 and score a goal, then that's all that matters. And he's one of them that I think if he was fit, I think he would have been first choice. I think Bobby would have been playing second fiddle, and then obviously integrating Nunez maybe a little bit slower in terms of the Premier League and stuff like that. But circumstances and whatever, injuries, Nunez has obviously now scored against City and whatever, and he might be in a chance of starting on Saturday. But I'm absolutely made up 5 more years, and then obviously having Alisson back as well is key, because we know Adrian made a few saves against Man City, but in terms of playing out from the back with Alisson, there's no one better in terms of just making the rest of the team at ease, and he's the best at it.
It was mad. They had Bernardo Silva on pitch, Cancelo on the pitch, Kevin De Bruyne on the pitch. Who else? They had some wonderful playmakers, but their biggest playmaker was Adrian for City. Honestly, no, he was. He tried so hard to just caress the ball into them every time from goal kicks. Wind up merchant. But Jack,
about a half, didn't it? It took him about a half to realise that he just stopped playing those little 30-yarders.
You're not good.
70-yarders.
Like, you're not good. Stop trying to be Alisson or Ederson. You're Adrian. A club hasn't actually paid money for your services ever in your career. Like, do you know that's a fact? It's never been, like, no one's ever paid real money for him.
I thought Betis did. I thought we bought him at Betis, I'll be honest.
Don't spoil it, that fact. Don't spoil that fact, Jack. No one's paid money for him. We're sticking with that fact. Do not spoil that fact. I've been using that one everywhere. No one's actually paid.
Much more interesting if Grizz says it's true. So let's stick with that.
Oh yeah, I think we might have actually actually that might be not true. I think we lent him out. You know those weird Spanish deals where you have a player and you lend them out from your academy and then have to buy them back in. I'm not 100% sure it counts.
No, people will correct us if we're wrong in the chat. They always do. Jack, your lineup, your formation. So you're saying that he usually, or in the Championship, plays a 4-2-3-1, but you think he's going to change it around slightly. Go on then. What's he going to do against us?
I only think it's going to be very minor. I think it's just that switch from a 4-2-3-1 to pull the 10 slightly back more into the midfield trio to play it. So I don't think it's going to be too heavy a change. I'd imagine. So Leno it's just been announced. So it's a done deal, and he is a Fulham player. So that's kind of interesting. Does he come straight in? Probably, yeah. I think it might be interesting to see how that pans out. I think he probably does, yeah. Although you feel a bit for Mike Rodak, who's played every single minute of preseason pretty much, and then been most minutes from last season as well. And as you win the league, that's twice he's won promotion with Fulham, and twice he's been dropped as soon as we've got to the Premier League. But you think Leno comes in? He is still only like 25 though, which is very young for a keeper. So he still has time on his side. I'm going to say Leno comes straight in. I'm going to say it'll be Kenny Tete at right back. Slightly more defensive option. It'll be Ream and Tosin in the middle because there isn't any other options. And it will be Anthony Robinson at left back.
To us. Is he fairly young?
He's US international, absolute speedster. Signed for Fulham. There was links to AC Milan, as every commentator told us for years. Every time Fulham were on the team, once linked with AC Milan. Did you know? Yeah, we knew. So there, I think it'll be Reed and Palhinha as the two deepest midfielders, with Andreas Pereira in front of them. A funny feeling gives Manor Solomon a debut off the left, Mitrovic through the middle, and if Harry Wilson's fit, he'll start. But I'm not completely convinced he's going to be. So I think it might be Bobby De Cordova-Reid on the right-hand side.
He's the fella that scored against us last time we
scored the absolute rocket. Yeah,
rocket, didn't he? Once in a lifetime type fucking strike. I was thinking, how the hell did?
To be fair, he was our top scorer that year. But
all right, but goals of that standard, I meant. Sorry, yeah, maybe. So you think more of a 4-3-3, double pivot of Reed and the new fella.
Pereira just in front of them, yeah, but not
being the irritating twat that he is, like, you know what I mean? Yeah,
I really hope so.
Mitrovic, Mick, it's interesting, isn't it? Mitrovic, big man for Fulham through the middle. Pep Guardiola's bought a big man to play through the middle. Yeah. We've invested in a big man through the middle. West Ham have bought a big man to go through the middle. What's it? New trend? What's going on here?
Yeah, I think this is the era, and actually I would probably take Mitrovic out of this slightly, but it's the era of the complete number 9 now. You know, someone who's able to hold the ball up, who's able to, you know, be a poacher, who's able to get in behind. And, it's that kind of new type of how do we continue? And look, I think Erling Haaland has basically forced this into action by basically, coming through off the back of, someone maybe like Lewandowski, I would argue, although he doesn't have that pace anymore. You look at, the more traditional 9s who were either target men and played in 2s or were nippy little strikers that got in behind. You now have this kind of complete forward who does both roles at once, and he's able to do that in a 4-3-3, which means you can still overload the midfield. You can still make sure that all those gaps appear. So I think it's interesting, but I do think this is the time of the 9. The time of the 9 has returned. So we shall see how it pans out.
Mick, over to us. It's probably the biggest question on everyone's lips. It's probably what Jack's come on today to get intel on our lineup. Like,
I'm will be feeding this back to Marcus
Silva, exactly. So, but listen, it is what it is. We've got he's a guest of ours, so we've got to reveal all. The big question, probably and possibly on every Liverpool fan's lips: Nunez, does he start for you?
I still don't know. I think I want him to, because I want him to start off with a bang. Obviously, coming on against City, getting half an hour, and his link-up play was good. He got in the box. Could have had a penalty if the ball from Firmino was earlier, before the actual penalty. Then wins as a penalty, then gets a goal. So I'd like to see him start, but I don't think Klopp does. I think he probably goes Bobby again, and then brings Nunez off the bench in a similar fashion the last maybe 35-30 minutes, I think. And then the only other one is it's Khanage or Matip, sorry. And I think he goes Matip as well with that one. So I think he probably goes the exact same team as City, barring Alisson in for Adrian, I think.
No surprises in midfield. Couple of shouts for Elliott to start. Do you know what I mean? Former ground, former team, and then or possibly Naby.
Yeah, you never know. With Klopp is out. There's definitely outside chances, but I just think from how we navigated that City game, I think they've kind of earned the right to go again. I think it was last year where I think it was the first game against Norwich where we had it was a Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, and Keita as our three. So the fact that we've got Thiago, Fabinho, and Henderson in that three, and I mean a lot of question marks over Jordan Henderson. Not from me on Twitter after certain pre-season games and the City game, whatever else. Which is if you do your worst against Jordan Henderson, because it can't be understated how maybe technically limited, but in terms of impact on a team and a dressing room, whatever else, that you can't get enough of that. So I think he starts. But yeah, I just think Alisson in for Adrian, and then I think he'll go Bobby, but I hope he goes for Nunez, because I want to see, like I said, I want him to start off fresh, 12:30, London away, Fulham, Premier League, get off to a bang and get a couple of goals, hopefully.
Jack, as the opposition on Saturday, what would you like? Because it's a tricky one. I always ask opposition fans, which attack would you like?
Mostly like to be your under 23s, if that's all right. But
no, but out of our attack, which three would you hate to play up against? Obviously, no more Sadio Mane, who you tended to have good games against Fulham as well.
Yeah.
But which three would you you'd really want to avoid?
I mean, Mo Salah famous. I think it scored in the last 5. Did you say?
Yeah, opening day games, every opening day.
It's not ideal preparation, really. Look, I think Mo Salah is going to be. Obviously, it's been him and Mane for so long. He's now the kind of sole old school talisman of this attack, who's kind of playing every single game he's fit. Now, his fact that he doesn't have to go to the World Cup, I think, is massive for you this season. It's obviously terrible for him, and I'm not, I don't think you're going to revel in it, but equally, I think it's a good thing for Liverpool. And how that's getting that rest in there when so many people have had, such engaged summers and Nations League, and then straight back into the league. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how the injury crises play out across the course of this season. I think I will be surprised if Darwin actually starts on Saturday. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing from your perspective. To be honest, from a Fulham perspective, it kind of doesn't matter who starts. These players are all brilliant. They're all world class. We're talking about a set of footballers here who are sensational. So if it's Luis Diaz, if it's Darwin, if it's Salah, if it's Bobby Firmino, you're going, okay, fine. But it doesn't matter, does it? They're just they're all.
Jack, do you know what I was thinking? Right, coming from the Championship, your centre backs would be probably more used to playing up against a big target man like Nunez, as opposed to Bobby, where he's going to fucking start wandering off, and your centre backs are going to start thinking, do we follow him? Do we give him to Ream or the new fella Palhinha to track? And do you know what I mean? He's one of those players that you can't. It's very difficult to keep a track of. Whereas Nunez, he's brilliant, he's quick, he's strong, but you're probably used to playing him. I don't know which ones you would probably prefer, your centre backs. I don't know. It's a tricky one.
I have a really interesting one on Darwin. I watched a lot of the Primera last season, and I watched a lot of him, for Benfica, and he's a very interesting case. But I actually think that there are going to be times this season where you play Darwin off that left-hand side, where he was often excellent for Benfica, because running into those gaps, and especially with a player like Bobby Firmino, who can make things happen and kind of dive in and make the pitch more narrow for the two wide players, and allow them to get in behind off his kind of, bringing the centre-backs out runs. I wonder if there's going to be some joy for Darwin in that. Now, obviously, you've bought him as a long-term number 9 option, and he is going to, I think, develop into that player. But I do think that for a while, he has that capability with the pace and power he's got. He is a physical specimen, Darwin, and he drags players all over the park just by being, so demanding of their time and attention constantly. And so I wonder if there are games this season where he's utilized a little bit more off the left as part of that rotation. I would probably still rather play against Darwin than Bobby Firmino. Not because I think of the stylistics, just because I think he's obviously keen to make an impression, keen to prove a point. I think his celebrations at the weekend highlighted that. But I think that what you're looking at there is, a player who's desperate to get off the mark, and players who are trying really, really hard sometimes can get things wrong. Whereas I think Firmino walks into this and goes, yeah,
I know this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm used to this. And I wonder if that is just the more sensible way to start the season. And then you chuck Darwin into the mix when it's all a bit more frenetic towards the end.
I think you've nailed it again. Yeah. Do you remember we were speaking about Mick, and he's a chaos maker, isn't he, Nunez? Like, we're not going to always have to score the perfect goal with him. It's going to be like one of those ones. He can score goals where the ball's thrown into the box, ricochet, just like the penalty situation out of nothing. You know, a simple cross. I love the way he peeled away as opposed to go for he laid it off to Mo, and the usual run we would have expected from most forwards or Liverpool type forwards is to go in that gap that he played, and Mo pits it down the line. What did he do? He took Diaz away from the play, and Salah chipped into him, and we get a penalty. Probably I don't know if the header was on target, but it causes chaos. And even the second goal, I love the movement around him. Like we spoke about Carvalho, but Carvalho, if Nunez didn't score, Carvalho was ready to score. I think we've got more, more strings to our bow. Is that fair to say, Mick?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of those things like the Carvalho can play on the left of a three. Obviously Diaz is definitely first choice there just because of how brilliant he is. But to see Nunez do that role, I think we've seen it in the games he played against Liverpool in the Champions League, where he kind of does drag himself over to that left hand side, and like Jack says, the pace and the power. And I think there's a moment in that game where he skips past Matip, like he isn't even there, and gets a cross into the box. And I think he does the same in the game at Anfield against Robertson, where he just nicks it past him and runs. So he's got the capabilities definitely to be a winger, because he's got that pace and power, and he's demanding of the ball. He wants the ball in behind, and those little Thiago on that left hand side. You can imagine Nunez ahead of him as a left three. Thiago just playing the little curved balls in behind for him, and he gets to the byline and whips it in. And then alternatively, if he's in the box on the end of them, I'd be happy for Nunez to be scoring 15 tap-ins, and then the rest, maybe some headers and some other more extravagant goals. But I think he's, like you said, strings to our bow, and I think it's one of those things like Nunez, Carvalho. Got a lot of players who can play in various positions, and that works perfectly for us, because we want to be rigid in terms of what we want to do, but in terms of people going to different places and picking up different positions, then who knows who they're marking? Like you said, like Bobby is going to drop in deep. We know what Bobby's going to do, but Nunez can drop in deep. He can maybe waver over to the left-hand side. Him and Diaz can switch positions. Diaz can go more centrally. So it's like one of them, like, have fun trying to stop them. It's one of them, like it's going to be fascinating to see how he does this season.
Yeah, have fun, Jack. We've certainly had fun tonight discussing it. Now we've got a few days to mull over it. I know people are coming in now thinking the show's starting at 10, but you're all very late. We've done a nice solid hour of great chat. Jack, I must admit, time's flown. I really enjoyed your company. Thanks very much for popping on today, man.
No, thank you so much for having me, mate. I really appreciate it. And, obviously, fingers crossed we beat you, but I think we're still a wee bit unlikely. So we'll have a good day at the cottage.
Let's have a prediction. Let's finish off with a prediction, guys.
Heart
and head.
What? Heart and head?
Heart and head.
Oh, my head tells me 3-0 Liverpool. My heart's going to say 1-0. We'll nick an early one and hope for the best.
That's the one. Mick?
Yeah, I think heart saying 3-0, head saying 3-0. I mean, hopefully more. But I
really wish my heart and head. Last season, I could do my heart and head predictions the same. This season, I feel it's going to be very different.
Yeah, Mitrovic scoring like 7 goals a game. You were saying
exactly.
No word of a lie. I'm not saying it because Jack's on the show, but I really hope Fulham stay up. Because as I said, I've got a lot of time for Silva. And plus, they've given us Elliott and Carvalho. So, do you know what I mean?
Possibly, we need some goodwill.
Possibly taking that Phillips off us as well. So, we do have a soft spot for them. But lads, thanks very much. Obviously, Mick, we'll catch up very soon. Nice one as usual. People in the chat, still 300 of you. Hopefully, you've got like not even half the people. A lot of love for Jack. Do you know what I mean? There was some silly comparisons with who he looks like. I didn't even bother putting them up.
I did see one. I'm not actually related to James Alcott and his QPR, so unfortunately we're gonna have to write that one off. But he does talk well about football, so I'll take a comparison if it's just in terms of knowledge.
Absolutely does. But hopefully you guys have all enjoyed the show. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm doing my weekly or building up to the Premier League, talking about other clubs, which we love doing on there. We done Chelsea show last night, which caused a bit of a stir. I think tomorrow's selection is Arsenal, which should be fun and interesting as well. So look out for that on the socials. Apart from that, guys, we hopefully see you very soon. And I'm going to try to find my amazing intro. And just when everyone's trying to go to sleep, I'm going to hit you with this outro. Take care, people. We out.